Okay, welcome everyone tonight. We are so lucky to have a wonderful presentation on how to do presentations and meetings from Trina. And for the Women's Way, what we've been doing is for the past year and a half, we've been having these classes. Either Trina and I teach them together or we each teach them. So this time it's Trina's time. So I get the lucky job of being the opener. So what we do to open is we usually do a short meditation just to get us all grounded in the light. And so I thought it might be neat to do something different and open up the Akashic records to let the divine in for our meeting. So I'm going to read a prayer that'll open up the divine, if that's okay. It won't take long. And see what creativity and also support that we get extra from the galactics. Okay, so here we go. We align with our divine primordial blueprint with guidance from the galactic Akashic records in all dimensions. All aspects of self are here now. All universal and celestial information and all important memories for our highest good and guidance are available to us now. We have access to all stellar wisdom of light now, delivered by the galactic Akashic record keepers in reverence for the well-being of all life. And so it is. So, masters, teachers, and guides, please join us and give us extra mojo for tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in.
Yay.
Okay, so Trina, it's your. Should I share now, or do you want to talk a little bit before, or should I go ahead?
I'll talk for a second before we get going.
Okay.
Yeah, so my first question was, like, do they give you a message back when you do this that they're like, yeah, you're in?
Yeah, well, I actually, yes. I already usually am in, but this makes sure I'm in. It's like my security blanket that it's open. But it was already kind of open for me.
Awesome.
But now it's open for all of us.
You
may
can
get a lot of cool inspirations, you guys, that you wouldn't normally have.
Yeah. And if you want to put it up on the screen, I'll just talk on the first slide and let you know when we move.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've been working kind of in the meeting planning business, but also doing presentations and like doing big events like conventions and trade shows. The largest one we do is in Las Vegas, one of the big hotels with about 300 vendors and 3 days of presentation, classroom style type things and stuff. And so a lot of experience in like setting up the rooms, what people really need to do to have a nice presentation, that kind of thing. But I also do presentations myself. And so the very first thing I would say on doing a Zoom presentation in this is that when you're doing this, what you want to do is make sure that where you're sitting or how you're presenting, it's that rule of thirds. You probably see when in TV commercials or documentaries where people move, they might film people from the side or something like that. But ideally, if you're going to be there, have your eyes about at the top third of the screen and do a nice shot with what's going on behind you. So that's kind of the first little tip as I'm sitting here looking at the presentation. Anyway, let's go on to the next slide. This is going to be full of a lot of ideas and things. And if there's something that you want to like take a picture of or do whatever, please feel free to do that. I'm hearing feedback though. I don't know what that is.
We can mute everyone if you want.
I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, um, the first thing people need to know is that public speaking is the #1 fear in America. Death is actually less scary than public speaking. And in this, I think a lot of people get hung up on the fact that, you know, I'm standing in front of an audience and they're going into this fear place. But really what your job is to come up and present an experience to people. It's really to let them feel something along with the fact that they're listening to you. And so you want to set the stage when you're doing your presentation so that it's pleasant and it's exciting, or whatever you're trying to put across to the people. But that's one of the things that you need to know right up front, is that you're not just imparting knowledge, you're also giving people an experience. I love this quote from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. So you always want to make them feel comfortable and invited. And if they have questions, you can answer their questions. But the feeling piece of it is what we resonate with. And I went through this Train the Trainer class quite a while ago. And the presenter was actually teaching us how to present, but also teaching us the impact of selling from the stage. And he literally moved from one side of the stage to the other, putting a hat on, running to the other, putting his other hat on. But the feeling that we got there as he was doing this presentation, you could watch the whole room starting to scoot to the front of their seat, even though he was explaining to us the psychology of how to sell your product from the stage and how to get people to run to the back of the room and buy. And we're all hearing that logical side. The way he was presenting it was actually getting everybody to scoot up and get ready to run. So he brought that emotion up in people. And that's one of the things you want to do as a presenter. You definitely want people to feel what you're doing at the same time. By the way, if you do have questions or whatever, I can kind of see you. You can wave. There's a chat bar. If you look at the bottom, if you haven't done Zoom before, down at the bottom of your page, we'll have a little place for chat. And you can put that up. Kathy can read if there's any comments, and she can interject questions and things also if all of you are muted. So welcome, Kay and Tom. So here's your first tip. And it's simple. This one is a simple tip. All presentations are about energy, connection, and communication. So you want to be able to set the energy. You want to be able to put this energy out. And I love this little person with the crazy hair that talks about energy. You want to be able to connect with people, and you want to communicate your message. So it's important that you feel yourself comfortable, but you have to raise your energy. And you've got to track the energy in the room. And you also have to stay on track. So part of your job is watching everybody. So it's so much easier, like when I do a Zoom, to have somebody's face there and I can see them and I can see what they're doing, instead of looking at the little squares and just talking and recording. It's totally different. Let's go to the next page. This is still part of tip 1. So you set and hold the energy. Think about what they do in a play. When they're doing a play, they captivate you. They bring you in, and they use it by doing eye-to-eye connection. They do it by being very authentic in what they do, coming from the heart. And the one thing you have to do is you really have to kind of get into the role or the script of what you're doing. This isn't about you at all. This is really about what is your message? What are you bringing forward? And if everybody could come forward and give a presentation of something that they think or they feel or get their message across in a very authentic way, not solid like this, not feeling frozen, but relaxed, loose, authentic, from the heart, this is when you start to connect with your audience. So make sure that you focus in on what your message is. For me, with this, the message is I want you to understand some things that you can do to implement into your presentations and make your presentations authentic and ones that people will really listen to. Because everybody has a message to share. And we want to make sure that you get very good at putting your message out. So let's go to tip number 2. Half the battle is being prepared. And I love this with Mark Twain. Mark Twain was so witty. It usually takes me more than 3 weeks to prepare a good impromptu speech. And his other thing was there's only 2 types of speakers in the world, the nervous and the liars. So an impromptu speech means you learning your script or your messages or your little sound bites ahead of time. It means doing the research, knowing the stories you want to tell, being prepared with them, because you never know when you're going to be asked to come up and say a word, to talk about something. I know Elizabeth has written a book, and if publicizing your book and saying, yeah, someone could easily say, hey, would you mind getting up and talking about what your book is about? Or would you mind getting up and letting people, share an experience that you have? So when you have some of those things in your pocket already, and you've already got them prepared and you know what it is that you want to say, then it makes it so much easier when other people, have asked you to present. The really good presenters are the ones who can definitely, they get up, they give a talk, but you can tell they know what they're talking about. And again, this idea, every person gets nervous. It doesn't make any difference. And even if you feel really comfortable, there's always something little inside. It's like, what else do I want to say? Or, do I have my points in a row? Doing presentations like this on Zoom with PowerPoint, using PowerPoint, makes it a lot easier because you can kind of put the points in that you want, and then you can speak to those. It becomes very authentic instead of trying to read it off of cards or whatever. That's why I like this a lot. And if you can see, what we've done is created a PowerPoint. Kathy can drive it off the Zoom and share the screen, and then it's really easy to talk to the work that you're doing, and it will save that presentation when you're using Zoom, which is pretty cool. So all of these, there's quite a few slides on tip 2 because a lot of this is being prepared. And I'm going to go through some of these. Know your audience. You always need to know who you're speaking to. And that makes it easy to connect with them, tell little stories to them. This audience is interested in presentations. So little stories about, the things that have happened to you in presentations, or forgetting your lines. My very first experience of getting up in public speaking, and you have to understand, I became extremely shy. And by the time I was 15, I was petrified. When I would get up in front of people to have to speak, I would just freeze up and I couldn't remember anything. And I had to get up and I had to present something to a teacher who'd won like the best teacher award or whatever it was. And I got up and I totally forgot what I was going to say. So I just said, I want to introduce to all of you our teacher of the year. And here he is, Mr. Cohen. And it was like, ta-da. And that's about all I said, because I couldn't even remember what class he taught in the school because I was so petrified. So when you know your audience, when you prepare yourself, if I'd been smart, I would have written a little script maybe, or had note cards, or put the things down that I didn't want to forget. That is so important, but every one of us has had a moment when we've completely forgotten what we want to say next. So it always helps if you have your little bullet points, but I feel for me personally, it's easier to talk just points and not write out a whole script with everything, but get the key things in. Know your space, your room, your stage, wherever you're speaking. Go there ahead of time. If you're going to speak in a room, make sure you kind of pop in ahead of time before people show up. where you can walk around and see if it feels comfortable for you, or if you want to move some things around. A lot of speakers, especially if you're giving a present or you're hosting a meeting or something, a lot of speakers are very, very particular about what they want, especially if they've been doing this for a while. So make sure that you clear with them ahead of time what kind of things they want. Do they want a microphone? Do they want a PowerPoint? And these are for you as well if you're going to be doing presentations. How do you want to present? Do you want water up at the front of the room? Do you want flowers in the room? Just all sorts of things like that. But it's key to know your space, and a lot of presenters will come in and take a look at their space beforehand. And don't be surprised if they ask you to move some things around and do things for you, because they just know how they like to work and they like to make it comfortable. Then know how you're going to show up. If you know your audience, you know how you're going to show up. You don't want to come looking in rags, and you also don't want to come dressed to the nines if the people are going to show up in blue jeans and sweatshirts or something like that. Part of it is about the relating. And this really even goes to sales. Something my husband learned years ago was figuring out who his clientele was to know how to dress to go to do a sale presentation, because you don't want to look better than your clients. But when you're doing presentations, you want to think about your appearance and your energy. One of the funniest things I ever had seen was, this guy was a public speaker, but a big man, and he taught on sales. And I mean big. And he had a gut that like stuck way out. And he had his pants that were pulled up very high over his gut with his belt, and he always wore a suit jacket. He looked very nice, but he was big. But during his presentation, and he was talking about appearance, and it definitely made an impact, because what he did was stood there and he said, "Now, do you feel comfortable with me like this?" And then he like shoved his pants down and let his gut fall out, and it was like sticking out under his shirt, and he kind of ruffled himself up and he said, "Or would you feel more comfortable if I was talking to you looking like this?" So think about your appearance, because that's the first thing people see when they walk in a room or when you step on a stage. And whether or not they know it, they're going to form some sort of idea in their head about what's coming based on the way you come out. Your energy level has to be big, especially talking with a microphone. You want to make sure people can hear you. Do not shy away from microphones. If they have them, use them. And you want to make sure your energy is big and people can feel it. You definitely also need to ask where and how to show up. We've had people that have had a call like, "Where am I supposed to go? What room am I supposed to be in?" And we're going around searching them out. So if you can, walk the space ahead of time, find your way there ahead of time, know how much time it's going to take you to be there, especially if someone's hiring you or expecting you to be a keynote for them. You don't want them to feel crazy just because you haven't found your way there yet. And again, know what it is that you need. Know if you need paper, if you need props, if whatever it is that you want to use. Make sure you know, and make sure you communicate it. If someone is hosting you, make sure you communicate that to them. So again, when you're doing your presentation, and we've worked with something called the story arc, which is know what your message is, know your audience, know what you want to communicate. So on one side, think of it like a rainbow. You've got your audience on one side, and you've got the message, what you want them to get, and then you build everything else in between. So always know what your ending is, and then who you're talking to, and then build through the middle of it. In the beginning, always tell them what you want to tell them. It's kind of like when you're writing, the introduction or the first paragraph generally has the idea of the chapter, and then the end of the book will summarize it. So tell them what it is they're going to get. Share the earn the right, which is your background, the things that you know, or the experiences that you have, so that people know that you know what you're talking about. When I give presentations on dream interpretation, I talk about the classes that I took, the books that I like, that I've been doing dream interpretation for 20 years, and give a little example or something, the impacts that it has, and the things that I want to teach them. If I talk about meditation, same kind of thing. What are you going to get from this? Or on the flip side, I may talk to a business group and talk to them about business systems. What are you going to learn in business systems? And I'll outline that to begin with. I also do a talk here about the importance of systems and streamlining systems. Have your script, bullet point your message, or write it out however you want to do it, but always have a script, or at least something you've memorized in your head to say, so that you're not fumbling for words. And then I always love this, remind them what you've told them at the end of your presentation. Sum it up for them. And then ask if there's questions. And this last thing, know your ask. If you're going to sell something, if you're promoting a book or you're promoting another class, know what it is, because part of the key in doing a presentation where you're really wanting somebody to buy in to something else that you're doing, you want to seed it through the thing a couple times. So you may say things like, well, here, you know, when I do this class, da 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 da, here's what I do. And I'll talk to you about that later, if that's okay with you. And everyone always goes, uh-huh. So you need to know what you want people to walk away with toward the end of it. The script is important. One of the best books I ever read was like the 1 minute presentation. It's in line like presentations for dummies or whatever, but this was the 1 minute presentation. And one of the cool things that it talked about is that most people do lose their attention within 3 to 5 minutes. So you can gauge it. You plan a certain amount of time for an opening, couple, you know, just a couple minutes, maybe a couple more minutes, earn the right, say your background kind of thing. You'll know how much time you want in the end to wrap it up. Say you want questions and answers, you want to leave 10 minutes at the end, whatever it is. Then you know exactly how much time you have in the middle of your presentation. If every point you want to go over is going to be 3 to 5 minutes or something like that, people don't always need a ton of data. They need experience and experiential things. So you want to bring in some stuff where maybe people interact. You might want to do something where you give them some chance to write things down, however you want to do it. But script your time. And include audience interaction. It's really great when you can do things like that. My husband just did, he ran the presentation at the Obama dinner, which is a big fundraiser for the Democratic Party. And he was the guy sitting back in the booth with the headset on, with the script and telling everybody what to do. I want to give you a little tip on the time management. Their presentation, and this just took place on Saturday, their program was 3.5 hours. There's a big debate between different factions about whether to include a break in the middle or different places to break. The woman who ended up writing the script had breaks scheduled so that people could get up, go to the bathroom, network, do whatever. And his suggestion was, this is a dinner. You shouldn't have a speaker on stage speaking over the dropping of the dinners, the plates, because there's too much noise. And so that's a good time to include a little bit of break if you've got a dinner presentation. Then they were going to do a fundraising auction. And they had 2 different keynotes they wanted. A lot of talk. Well, what came back after the head of the Democratic Party got her hands on it, she took out every break, said people can fend for themselves, they can take care of themselves, they're all big people. And she moved the auction to the last thing of the evening. Well, there were presenters all through all this time. They get up to the point where there's the auction time, and they said, we just have to change a couple things, get the auctioneer. 2/3 of the room got up and walked out because they hadn't been to the bathroom yet. So a lot of them never came back in because they got stuck in the hall, either in lines or networking with people. And when the auctioneer got up to start auctioning, he only had about 1/3 of the people in the room to bid. So this was a really poor time management choice. And it would have been better if they'd given little breaks at different times for people to either meet their neighbors or to do something, to chat, give them a little break around the dinner time so they could go out and use the restroom. Put your keynotes toward the end. So people are going to stay for the keynotes. Weave the auction in. They could have done the auction during dinner easily. But if you want to keep the people there, keep the biggest draw toward the end so that they stay. All right, one more thing. Let's see, a couple more slides on tip 2, which is all about, being prepared. This is being creative, making your message interesting. So you guys can read these things, be a storyteller, personal anecdotes, stories, questions, quotations, analogies, statistics, humor, common ground. All of these things are ideas that you can use, that you can weave into your presentation. And depending upon the group that you're with, may depend upon what you want to do. And here's the last slide on being prepared. Rehearse. Stand in front of the mirror. See how you do. Make sure, I've done this before, where my notes are not legible and large enough. And I've even done this on a radio. I do Law of Attraction Radio. We do a book club on there called Quantum Leap Book Club. And we have to give some of our own ideas and things on what we're speaking about, or reflections on what's going on in the book. And I have done this so many times where I've written myself notes, and then when I go to read them, I can't read my notes, and I'm just always so grateful that I'm just on the radio and I can hold it up. I'm thinking, if I'm doing this on Zoom or, doing an interview or something and my notes are so tiny I can't read them. And it's like, I don't necessarily want to grab glasses and put them down and all of that, because that's just crazy. Anyway, but don't read your notes. Make sure you're prepared. You can use index cards. That just went crazy. Okay, is it working? All right, all of a sudden it was like echo, echo, echo. Make sure, whether you have PowerPoint, your phone. A lot of people now are doing notes on phones, notes on iPads, notepads. Have your handouts and visuals, whatever you want to use, and weave them into the presentation. So at this point, there's still more tips, but I just want to see if anybody has any comments, questions, if anything came up. Okay, did you get anything, Kathy?
I'm unmuting them if they want to be. I unmuted a bunch of people. Bill, do you want to say anything?
I'm not hearing it.
Okay. No, yes?
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay, never mind. I'll just mute everybody. Okay.
We'll keep going.
Okay.
Again, if you want to just take a photo of a page and stuff, you're not going to insult me by doing that, or I'm not bothered by it either. So Um,
Should I stay on this slide, or should I go to tip 3?
we can go. We can go. Present and be present. So there's a couple quotes here. What we say is important, for in most cases, the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. And a good order is pointed and impassioned. So we have Jim Beggs and Marcus Cicero. And most people don't speak on things that they're not passionate about, but they're too afraid, they're too worried, they're not present, they're not grounded to stay focused on and stay in the heart. So in order to be present, use your breath, use pauses. It gives you a chance to collect your thoughts. It lets them think a little bit. Don't be thinking about where you need to go or who's in the audience or what's going on. Connect with your message and connect with the audience, but be present. So if you're feeling yourself getting nervous or forgetful, whatever it is, drop back into your heart or just pause for a minute and remember why you're sharing what you're sharing. It comes across so much more you when you do that than if you're just reading off of notes and skipping over things and trying to remember. So I think the better, in my opinion, the best presentations, the best people are the ones that really connect, and they take their time to connect, and you can feel their passion for what they love. The one we listened to the other night, Paul, he had so many aspects of himself that he shared, which was amazing, actually. The fact that he grew up with this father that was a scientist, but he was also down to earth, and he was funny. He challenged everyone with puns. He's a professor at a university. He's he's a visual master. He's been involved in things like Avatar and Lord of the Rings, doing the special effects. There was so many pieces of himself that he shared during that presentation. And by the time he was nearing the end, nobody wanted him to go because he was just fun. And he told the stories. And when Paula was asking him, share more about you, he's like, no, I'm here to talk about my dad. And it was just, he diverted. This was one of the things, and this tip too was really great when it came to political things. The really first political presentation we got involved with was creating a city and county in the state of Colorado. And we went through political training, which was, here are your speaking points. We're going to teach you how to spin everything back to those points. And it was fascinating. And now when I listen to political speeches, I can tell you what their points are. And when they're asked questions, I can tell you how they're spinning it. But you have to be present to the questions. You have to be present to the audience that's there when you're getting grilled, especially if you're in a debate. That was my first one. My second one was GMO labeling initiative, and a lot of the people that I went up against were in debates. And you have to listen and be present and know what your points are and be rehearsed and keep yourself really focused. I see Rhonda has a question.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
You're okay.
I was just curious. So when you have a message, right, and in this case you were learning, okay, you have these talking points and you want to spin everything back to your talking points. Does that, I hear that all the time, obviously, when people talk, but like, to me, that doesn't ring authentic. So how can you do that in a way that's authentic?
You become impassioned with what the reason why you're doing it, first off. Secondly, you know the points you can speak on and the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. I refused in the city and county campaign. They said, you're a bleeding heart and you bring too much of that into what you're doing. You need to stay to the points. So the people who were driving the campaign, they chose me when we had to connect with an audience, like in Boulder, people that lived from the heart, not necessarily business people and things like that. But when it came to getting the endorsement, because Broomfield County basically had to pull out of 4 counties, and we needed the endorsement, and nobody thought we would get it from Boulder. And they sent me up there totally believing that I would not get it. They really thought Boulder would be against it. But for me, the reason I was doing that campaign was we didn't have human services. People had to go to Boulder. They had to go to Golden. They had to go to Brighton. They had to go, it was like all these different cities. Nothing was here. Our police department had to deal with 4 county sheriff's departments. Now, what I've just done is I've given you 2 of the speaking points, but from my more impassioned, heart-based point of view than just saying, this is the reason why we're doing it. And so there was a way to move things into what your personality is and to why you're doing it and still be able to move people. But I don't like the political spin, and I don't like that that's what they train people to do. Though it's great if you're going to teach something and you need to get the points across, to know the points you have and how they relate to you and how you feel about them. Because then you can tell the story authentically.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay?
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
No, that's great.
Okay. And, everybody touches different audiences, and everybody isn't for every audience. That's why in marketing, you'll hear Kathy talk about, you need to know your audience and who you're going for, because the way you present what you're doing is going to be based on the audience you're speaking to and where you want to get your work or the clients you want to connect with. So it's important to know who you feel comfortable with and who you don't. I'm sorry. That's okay. Go ahead.
If you don't know ahead of time, like who your audience is, I'm assuming there's like some sort of opening questions that you can ask the group to get a feel for which direction to go. Yes?
Absolutely. And sometimes you'll walk in and people have had experience in things, and sometimes they haven't. And so it's a great thing. You can survey, as an opening, you can survey an audience.
Okay.
And I did that. I gave a presentation on, it was called Light the Fire, Start the Flood. It was at a restoration conference. And what it was really about was about being creative, how to start the passion in you to get a flood of ideas as an entrepreneur. But I was completely expecting, since this was more of a women's program, to have most of the women show up. Instead, I ended up with a standing room only crowd, 85% men. And I'm going up to get on the stage and I'm like, this audience is way different than who I thought I was talking to. So it was kind of like, well, how many of you, are feeling a little bit stuck and you really want to raise that energy again in your business? I had to think on my feet. But I came up with different questions to ask them. Then I kind of knew who was in the room and what they were looking for. And it turned out that a lot of them were, through the course, were really looking about how to get their employees engaged and how to get their employees more intermingled into the work that they were doing and taking more responsibility, and how did they create passion in their employees. So then I had to tweak. I know the material, but I had to tweak the material to what they were looking for in order to present to them. So when you do enough prep ahead of time that you know all your key points, you can build stories that relate to the people that are there. It also helped that I was in the cleaning and restoration industry for almost 25 years. So I knew what their struggles were, because at one point I had 70 employees. And so I could relate to the questions they were asking. But sometimes it is just thinking on your feet. Anyway, part of tip 3, if that's good, and we keep going on, is that good? Okay. Nope, go back one slide, Kathy, thank you. Before you get going, a lot of people have rituals they do to raise their energy. They might jump up and down. They might exercise. You can kind of see speakers on the side of the room. Some of them know, some of them will sit and meditate or focus on what they want to present. Almost I would say probably every big speaker has something that they go through, that they do beforehand. And then you see them come out, and even if they're feeling sick or they're feeling tired or whatever it is, they raise their energy because they know they have to come out with a high energy level. So even if it's doing like a fire breath or something to pump yourself up, you pump yourself up. You always know how you're going to enter. You need to know, like, how do you like to present? Are you the kind of person who likes to walk around? Or are you the kind of person who likes to stand behind a podium? Do you like to get down in the people? And that's always fun, like climbing off the stage and going right out and talking to people. You watch your audience and you know what you need to do. Know how to watch your time. So if you don't have a timer in front of me, like right now, I have the timer on the computer I can watch. I also have a clock on the wall I can see. I know how much is left in my presentation, so I know where I'm at in the presentation. If you need to bring a timer up on stage with you, bring it. If you need someone in the back of the room that can give you, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they can tell you how much time you have. And we do that a lot with presenters. Is we have someone in the back and we've got signs we'll hold up that'll say 10, 5. That way they know how much, if they're running, they can close it out. That allows us as a meeting planner to stay on the time schedules that we have too. And we're pretty, I'm probably not as strict as what Larry is, but Larry last year when he did this Obama dinner had the people, the handlers on the side of the stage who would make sure that people would get out on the stage. He would remind them the timing. They would remind them that there was a little timer up front that they could see. And then they were also told that if you run over, you'll have one warning and then your mic will be turned off. You try and tell politicians this. He turned the mic off of the Speaker of the House because she wouldn't stop speaking. So know that can happen.
But they invited him back this year, so it must have not been so terrible.
Well, because they didn't run over. They stayed, and even this year, if you had heard anything about the Oscars, they didn't have an MC. And they told everybody, here is your timing. When they announce your name as a winner, you have exactly a minute and a half to get out of your seat, to get on the stage, to accept your award, and do your little speech, and they will take you off. Now, they let a couple people run a little longer, but if you notice, they turned the mic off for a couple people. So no behind the scenes. There is a script, there is timing. And do the same thing for yourself, even if you're given a little talk. Time your talk. And again, this is a little reminder. Connect with people, set the energy, welcome people, honor them, thank them, have powerful statements, tell them what you're going to tell them, earn the right, stay on script. This is all about being present. Yes. I see you, Kathy.
What is the earn the right? Can you explain that?
Earn the right is giving your background and your story
Oh, okay.
to say why you're here.
Okay, your credentials, kind of.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like your credentials and why you want to give people what you're giving them.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thanks.
And sometimes I've seen speakers get up there and say, this is some of my background, and is it okay with you if I share more with you? You know, that, and most people are just like, yeah, share more. So there, you know, it's interesting to see how your audience will relate. Go ahead and go to the next one. Okay, and this is a biggie. Be aware of you. Be aware whether you've got eye contact with folks. I tend to go when I can't think of what I want to say sometimes. Your body language. Body language is huge. Many people don't realize how impactful it can be. And I tell this story of going, this was, again, it was a political thing. I've been around politics for a while. And Larry was on city council. We went to a meeting, kind of like a convention for elected officials. At the time, they hadn't had the primaries yet in Colorado. So there were 4 main candidates, 2 Dems, 2 Republicans that were running for the governor's office. They were each going to speak to the crowd. So they had them sitting at a table at the front of the room. So the table was, from the audience perspective, the table was off to the left, and then they had a podium, and the speaker would get up to the podium. Well, 3 of the candidates, when their counterpart was up at the podium giving his talk, sat very respectfully, sat facing the audience, or slightly turned to the speaker. One of the candidates, though, the whole time the people were talking, had his back kind of turned like this and looked over his shoulder. It was even to the point where the shoulder was almost pointing to where his back was almost to the audience. And I just looked at him and I said, Lair, I could never vote for this guy. He's disrespecting the other speakers. He's actually showing that the audience isn't all that important either. So why in the world would I want to listen to him? And it made a huge impact on me. So when you're presenting, know how you want to do it. Are you one that likes to walk around on the stage or pace, or do you move back and forth? Also make sure, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I'm dry. And make sure you have what you need. If you need tissues, if you need water, any of those things you need. If you're being hosted, tell them this is what you need. If you're doing it yourself, bring it yourself. Now, voice inflection is really important too, especially with stories. Kathy's waving at me.
I joined Toastmasters, and I'm still a pretty novice at it, but it's really fun because you're grading people as they speak and how many they say, or how they work. But a lot of people look down when they're speaking. It's so interesting, and it isn't necessarily that they've got their flat, their index cards and they're looking down. They seem to either look up to like, oh, what was I thinking, or down, and it's so distracting compared to just having that eye contact. And there was one course I took on speaking from the stage that they said pick somebody in the audience to try to relate to.
Mhm.
And do you agree with that? Or do you pick several people in the audience?
I think several, and you want to do it on both sides of the room and in the middle, so that you're constantly going back and forth from the crowd. And if you're a walker or a pacer, or you don't want to stand behind a podium, when you walk, say you walk to the left side of the stage, kind of talk to the right. If you walk to the right side of the stage, turn and talk the other way. That way you're with the people on one side, but you're also expressing to the people on the other side, and you're including everyone.
Okay.
Sometimes you want to, like talk to somebody to the back of the room. That's always fun. I got used to reading the energy, and sometimes I would just watch different people while I was presenting, and I could see them fidgeting or something like that. And I was doing a little talk about connecting with the audience and paying attention to what they're doing. And I said, and we were actually talking about body language. And I said to one young man, it was, I was actually talking to his father, and I said, like, for instance, I can see you twiddling. He had his pen. He's like twiddling, putting it behind his ear, doing different things. And he turned around and he looked at his son and he said, I told you should sit still. And I said, it's not him, it's you. And he went, what? And I literally got off the stage and had walked down the center aisle, and he goes, he was like flabbergasted. Of course, everybody was kind of laughing at that point. And he looked at his hand and he had his little pen. But you can see people doing things like that in your audience, and it's kind of fun. Sometimes you want to call them out, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want to go up and just talk to them and walk around.
What do you do, Trina, if people are on their electronics? Like, I taught a couple classes up at CU at the business school, and the kids are all on their computers and on their phones. Is there anything that you suggest that you should do when people are using a lot of electronics while you're trying to talk to them?
Make an agreement up front.
Oh.
It's like, I'd appreciate it if you turned your cell phones off, and I really want to give you the best of me.
Okay.
And I'd really like to work with the best of you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, would you mind putting them away so that we can have a really great interaction? There's nice, polite ways to ask them.
Yeah, I was just shocked when all the kids were on their laptops, and it's not like what, anyway.
Some of them are taking notes, and sometimes you just have to get clear with that.
Yeah.
But it's like, I recognize the fact that you may have to use the restroom, you may need to take a call, whatever it is. So please excuse yourself from the room.
Right.
And don't distract the others.
Okay.
There's just nice ways.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But the voice changes and the inflections. When you're talking, you can say things really powerfully, or you can say them really softly. So people need to move in to listen. And that's a practice. That's a practice in making your points. How do I want my voice to sound? It's a good one. That one's a good one. So again, reading the energy of the room, you want to change it if it drops. If it looks like people are going to sleep on you, you can tell people, get up, high five, meet your neighbor. And it's called a state change, is what it's really called. You're changing the state of the energy in the room. So if the room starts dropping, you need to have your little tricky things that you want to do to raise it back up again. Nothing makes them, they make them crazy. If you're like, okay, and you can call it out. Looks like everybody's a little bit tired, might need to wiggle around a little bit. Okay, let's get up and do this. Or turn around and say hello to your neighbor. Turn the other way and say hello to your neighbor. The one that usually gets everybody is when you say, Okay, turn to your right. And everybody say hello to the neighbor on your right. But everybody turns right. And then they all crack up laughing because they really can't talk to anybody. Or some of them are like, all right, everybody turn to your right and rub your neighbor's shoulders or something like that. Just something to get them moving and that kind of a thing. And then again, if you have something to offer, you can offer it. And then know how you want to do your ending, what you'd like to say. Those are a couple things. But again, this is being present with the time. It's being you being there, paying attention. Those are really, really important. So the next thing is setting the space. So if you're on and you can see the pictures, one of them is kind of a wooden chairs in a really boring classroom. And the other one has plants and tables. And you need to know what kind of space you want to set because you're going to hold the energy of the space. Most beautiful place I have ever been in for a conference was in India. And it was at a university. It was in their big auditorium thing. They literally created side drops of woven flowers and woven flowers across the front and brought in huge trees, live trees and big things all around the room. You felt like you were in a garden. It was awesome. Some of the little tips I learned was make sure you have a table next to you that you can have your stuff on. Most people are right-handed, so right is usually a good place to put it. Have your stuff there that you need a drink, whatever it is. Put some flowers or something live. Make it beautiful because when the space is beautiful, people settle in and feel much more comfortable than this other stark-looking classroom thing that they had, that they have there. And you have to hold the energy of the room. So it's up to you to decide how you want it set out. So basically how you set it is what you're presenting. If you're doing a keynote or a talk, you may want to be center stage, or you may want to walk around. You may want to be teaching. You may want to put it like a keynote or a talk, a presentation like that. You might want the chairs set up in a chevron style, which is usually rows in front. And I like this the best. People sitting in front with aisles going off to the side with some other chairs. The energy stays in the center. And if you have a center aisle, it's like everything goes whoosh out down the center aisle. So I love chevron for talking, and that's usually how we set. We don't normally have middle aisles going down the middle. That's usually kind of off to the side. Teaching, you might want tables for people. So again, each one's different. Some meetings, we had one of the coolest meetings by using high top tables and had people sit in groups of 4 or 6 around the high top tables because there was a lot of interaction and creation that was going to go on. And instead of sitting them in a normal style, it was like create the little pods of people that would work together in a group and then talk to them that way. There's things like half rounds where they might set a round table, but they only put chairs on one side so you can see the speaker. A lot of different, and this is the board or council kind of things always has like big head tables and places in the audience. So it depends on what you're presenting and the way that you want your room to look. And it's very powerful because it holds the energy of the space. And, you know, if you're a board or council, you want to hold that energy at the front of the room. If you want creation to happen, you want to create little pods of creation. So think about things like that in whatever the presentation is that you're doing. You set the energy. And then these are other things to consider, which is your style, your comfort. You tell the people. I loved Governor Roy Romer. Was always a kick. He would wear his bomber jacket. This guy would come in to speak to all these government officials. He would come in with a bomber jacket on and tennis shoes in many cases. Sometimes he'd have dress shoes on. But the very first thing he would say, and he'd have a tie with his bomber jacket, but the very first thing he said is, I got to get comfortable. I can't talk to you if I'm not comfortable. Off would come the jacket, off would come the tie. He'd roll his sleeves up like he's going to work, and then he'd go, okay, that's so much better. And that was his style. So know what your style is and how you want to present it. The positioning of the speaker commands the room. Know if you need screens or projectors. A lot of times you don't necessarily want the screen or projector behind you. You probably want it more kind of off to the side so you can speak to it and you're not blocking it when you're speaking. Otherwise, you have to move to the edge of the stage to do the presentation. What kind of sound do you want? Is this room huge? You need a microphone? Do you want to have music? Do you want music playing in between? All these kinds of things. And to podium or not to podium? Yeah, Kathy's got a question.
Well, I have a comment because I do a lot of video of events like this. And if you have someone speaking and the room is dark and their PowerPoints, like if Trina right now was speaking and the PowerPoint were right behind her, it's impossible to get a good video. So if she's not off to the side, and if the ideal thing for a videographer is to have the lights not totally down, just dimmed, so that you can get enough light on the person speaking. And a lot of times what I have to do is video the person and then get the slides and then interspace them so you have the audio to interspace them, because otherwise if it's like backlit. Like if I had a big light behind me right now, that's what Rhonda just did. You can't see the speaker at all.
Yeah, there's shadow. There's silhouette. You can start doing silhouette sort of.
Yeah, but I don't think that if you're doing a sizzle roll or something for your selling another presentation and you're just this voice in the dark,
yeah,
probably not ideal.
Doesn't work so well.
No.
And
Anyway,
if you do want to make it dark, then figure out a way of keeping yourself lit, whatever it is, just so there's light on you.
Rhonda, do you want to say something or no? Okay.
Cool.
No,
So
but we have. I'm in this a group where we do these Zoom classes a lot, and there's someone in the group who is always in the dark. And I think she prefers it that way, honestly. But it's strange. It is really strange to kind of, I'm listening, but I'm almost like straining because I'm not getting the additional input of being able to see her. So, yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Good point. It's kind of, it's like when you go to do one of these courses and half the people don't show their face. That's the same thing.
But even if you're doing like a Zoom like this, now if you had seen what behind me looked like before, I moved a bunch of my paper. But it's like, set your background. Make sure you have a nice background behind you and that you're not, the one I was working with some youth today, and they hung a picture on the wall, but the picture was like right behind her head. So it looked like, she had her head in a frame. And so it's always kind of funny because you don't always notice what's behind you, but you want it to look very nice. It doesn't matter so much with participants as much as the presenter. The presenter needs to be aware of the fact that they're in a nice environment. It's important. People, like you said, Rhonda, people pick up on signals and they don't get all the signals they need. I mean, if I'm talking about systems and structure and stuff and you see piles of paper back behind my desk, what's that going to tell you? Like, this woman doesn't have a clue what she's doing. So keep in mind what's behind you if you want to start doing like little Zoom presentations. Set your space. It's really important. You want to go to the next slide? And this is like the last tip. This is you be you. So share your message clearly, authentically, and from the heart. This little picture was actually on Fox News of me speaking on the steps of the state capitol when we had a rally for the GMO labeling initiative. I had never done that before in my whole life. And so it was a little daunting to get up on the steps of the state capitol and look out across this whole civic center area and the legislative building and the people that were all standing down there. And it was a little unnerving for me because I had never done that before. And I had to ground myself back in and really think about my points and why I was doing what I was doing. And then I end up on the TV that night. They did the clip of me up on the state capitol. So I was like, oh my God. That campaign was extremely emotional, much more than the other one that I did because the factions were so split. And some of the debates and things I did, one of the scariest ones that I did, I was at the Southern Republicans in Colorado, and all of them were farmers, ranchers supporting GMO seeds and things like that. So I was really walking into hostile territory at that point. But as I was waiting, I noticed they had screens up behind on both sides of where the speaker was, continually running a feed of anti-Democrat stuff with little things like the Democrats kill this or the Democrats do this. And it was like a subliminal message that played the whole time. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I'm debating the head of the Colorado Farm Bureau, and I've got this message that's playing behind me, and I have to get my point across to this group. And so I had to use a lot of science, logic, and heart, authentic passion coming forward as to why, and talking about the people getting sick, talking about the numbers of cancer and things like that. And Larry had to use the same strategy going out in eastern Colorado with a lot of the farmers and ranchers. And the men were mad. He's like, all I want to do is get out of that room because I was talking to such a hostile crowd. But he started talking about the cancers, and when he got done, the women that came forward and said, my child has cancer, my husband has cancer. You really think this has something to do with it? And you know, it was like, absolutely, we know glyphosate's dangerous. So those kinds of situations, you really have to be yourself. You have to be clear. You have to know your message. You have to know your statistics, and you have to speak from the heart. And it's you being you and why you're doing it. And you know, when you walk in there into something like that, that 80% of the people aren't going to be on your side, and you're going to get kickback. And that was definitely a learning experience and fun. So let's go. So again, here's that last slide. What did you learn? Tip 1, it's simple. It's just about energy, connection, and communication. So you're building relationships with your people. You're sharing what you know. You're doing it as clearly and concise, and you're holding the energy of the room. The second thing was all about being prepared. The third tip was present and be present. So always continue to ground yourself back in. Don't lose yourself. The fourth one was setting the space, making it comfortable, making it beautiful, making it the way that you want to be able to present in. And then the fifth tip is be you. Always you, not somebody else. And I learned this, it was funny, we were learning about closes in this Train the Trainer. And they had like 10 different kinds of closings. The really like in your face kind of thing. Then there was, they actually called it like the namaste or something like that. And got up there with a person who was just very quiet and gentle and things. So it's really about, you know, who are you yourself and how can you present? Because if you're not an actor, If you're not dramatic, don't try and be dramatic because you're not going to come across as real. If you're someone who just comes from the heart all the time, come from the heart. If you're someone that's scientific, you can be scientific, just throw in a lot of fun stories. So, you be you. And then keep going. Questions and answers, if anyone has any. We have about 10 minutes before we're done, which is about where I wanted to end, if we wanted to chat.
Can you go back to one of your slides where it said stay on script?
That's probably being prepared.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably back in the twos or something. I bet. There's a stay on script. Tip 3.
It was later.
After that one?
Yeah.
That's present and present. In tip 2 was about the script, time and outline the flow. Is also there too.
I think it was later than the slide you've got up there now.
Okay. You want to go further down?
Yep. Okay, hold it. Yeah. Connect.
Uh-huh.
Powerful statement.
Mm-hmm.
What were you?
Okay, so powerful statement is it may be the point that you're wanting to make, that like with GMO labeling, it was and we couldn't say GMOs were dangerous for you or things like that. But our powerful statement is, shouldn't you know what's in your food? Shouldn't you know what you're going to put in your body? Don't you want it to be healthy? Don't you want to make sure there aren't chemicals in it? There were different statements like that. So it's really hammering home a point that you want to make. And sometimes it's good to do in questions. Sometimes it's using a powerful statement like a quote that somebody has made that will make your point.
You I think referred to that as a rhetorical question earlier, right?
Yeah. Well, some of them are to gauge your audience and to know, kind of to survey. And then a lot of these are rhetorical questions. Some of them are powerful because sometimes people don't get it, especially in that case, I actually would quiz my opponents in the debates. Like, I don't understand why you don't support GMO labeling. Wouldn't you want to know what's in your food, kind of thing? Or why don't you farm organically? And the things that I found out, like the deer in headlight looks I got we don't know how to grow food that way. Our parents switched to using genetically modified seeds and glyphosate when I was really little. I've only learned how to farm this way. If you take this out of my life, I can't grow food. You're stealing my livelihood from me. So you learn the audience by quizzing people. And then sometimes you have to change your statements. Like we had all our key statements and we had little scripts that we could make our point. But a powerful statement will hold people kind of speechless sometimes. And really good presenters are very good at delivering a powerful statement. We've had some leaders that are extremely good at that.
Can you give me an example?
What keeps popping in my head is there's usually a line or something in a movie that's the point that they want to make. Ronald Reagan was one that was very good at communicating. He used powerful statements all the time. A powerful statement that they used when Nancy Reagan had started her war on drugs was that picture. Sometimes a powerful statement is in a picture. And when they would put that picture up of the frying eggs and it would say, your brain on drugs,
Mhm.
That was powerful. And it wasn't very, a lot of times powerful statements can be done in a picture, or with a picture. And the picture helps sink it in to people too. So, yeah.
Is a powerful statement part of your whole premise? That's the guiding overview that you're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
So you repeat it several times, or you use it at the beginning and the end.
Yeah. Ads, it's awesome to kind of watch ads and advertising and see what they use, because most of the time they use powerful statements. And ads, they only have a 30-second clip or 15 seconds to get their point across. And so they narrow things down without much description into a powerful statement. Those are some of the great ways of getting, ideas of how to do it, and put in little snippets. And a lot of times they do use video, or they use a picture with it. So sometimes the best powerful statements you can use in a presentation is to show a picture with it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, one didn't just like flow in my head. I was kind of looking for it, but it just didn't flow.
Does anybody else have questions? She does.
I'm just thinking that there must be a mixture of script and spontaneity, right? So like if you know your material well, it's almost even when you talk about your powerful statement, if you don't you're speaking to a particular demographic, right, with that statement. So you would almost want to have more than one way to say the thing that you want to say, right? And then it's sort of like it's like a masculine feminine balance, right? Because you want your script, which would be kind of the masculine way of organizing what you're going to say, and then you want to have like a feminine kind of fluidity, so that you can, like you said, be if you're caught off guard, or if you get that things aren't what you thought they were, or whatever, you can engage in a more spontaneous way.
Yeah.
Still have the same, but still have both avenues aligned with the message, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
that's why it's great to know what stories you like to tell in conjunction with something that's going on, or you've got your script together enough.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can write in your script this story, that story, just so if you don't want to forget it. And there's a lot of times, like I'll take a PowerPoint like this, and then print the slides, and it has note places on the side. And so sometimes I'll take my script that I have for the PowerPoint, and I'll just list little stories or little thoughts that I have. And I'll do this like when Kathy's presenting. A lot of times, we'll share our presentations ahead of time, and I'll print hers out in something like that. Or if she gives it to me in PDF, I'll print pages, and if there's something I think of that I might want to interject, I'll just put a note on the page. And that way, we can have dialogue, but make other points and things like that too.
Cool. Okay.
A lot of the spontaneity, sometimes you're bouncing off people, and it's really okay if you don't have an answer. You just go, I'm not sure how to answer that one. Or sometimes it's like, that's a really tough question, but I can find an answer for you and get back to you later on with it. It's just being honest. It was like, I couldn't think of a powerful statement. I could think of ways to find them, but I couldn't think of one just with the words popping up just like that. Kathy's waving.
Sometimes when I get to do speaking at events, I'll have a giveaway that if people, it's sort of a way to wake people up also. But if I do have a giveaway, I'll ask a question, and if somebody answers it, they get the gift. And then pretty soon, other people are starting to participate because they want a free book, or they want a USB drive, or they want something too. So it's another way to, if you can sort of see them getting sleepy or start restless, that you can engage them. But then you have to have those items with you.
Okay.
I have a friend who's an instructor. He's really good. He throws candy. It's like if someone asks a good question, he always had $100,000 bars. And he's like, that's $100,000 question. And he, you know, and I'm like, Barry, you really probably ought to like quit throwing candy, because it's probably not the best thing for all these people to eat. But yeah, and I even did a really subtle, I do a health and wellness pavilion with the restoration people. This is another way to get points across. I had a lot of friends that were getting sick and dying. A lot of them had heart problems, cancers, diabetes, different things like that. So I set up a little pavilion at the show that we do, and all I did was make posters. And each one of them had a certain statement or a point that I wanted to get through, and I just hung them around the room. And I had some literature and things, and then I just hung back. And when people would come in, I'd just say, "Oh, welcome. You know, here's some stuff just to take a look at." And I had a powerful statement that I did, which wasn't writing anything, was doing a demonstration about how much sugar was in different kinds of drinks. So I would have like a can of Coke, and then I'd measure out the number of teaspoons and set it next to it. And I did it with all different kinds of drinks. But most of the time, I didn't really talk to people unless they wanted to ask me a question. I just kind of hung back and let them move through at their own pace and what they wanted to do. The last show that I did with this, most of the questions were about diabetes and pre-diabetes and what they could do to change their diet. So now I know at my next show, I need to create some more posters and some more information for these people. And it was just a subtle way to get points across. I don't think the Coke and stuff was so subtle, but it was subtle that I wasn't telling people things, they were seeing it. I also went and bought a lot of fast food, put it in containers about a month before with the receipt of the date that I purchased it. And then I waited to see if they molded. And some of them molded really nasty. And other ones looked exactly the same way as the day I bought them. And the people would pick those up and they'd go, "Look at this, it must be good food." I was like, "Nope, you didn't get the point. Good food molds. Good food decays. Food full of chemicals looks just like the day you bought it." And so then I just ask them the question, "What do you think is real food?" That was a pretty powerful question. But my whole point in doing it was to get the message really subtly but succinctly that you need to pay attention to what you're putting in your body. And I learn every time I do this. So there's a lot of different ways to do presentations, and it's kind of what you want to bring forward. So any other questions? Because we're like right at the 7 o'clock or a little after the 7 o'clock mark, and I want to be able to honor all of you with your time. And I just really appreciate every one of you who came on today. What comes out is part of the energy that you bring as well. So your questions and comments and things like that actually add to what's brought forward in the presentation. And so with that, I'm really grateful for that. And the last slide, Kathy, has our information on it. it's a little hard to read our emails. Next month, Kathy will be doing a presentation on authentic video marketing, I think is what we're touching on next month. I can't hear you because you muted yourself.
Yes, I'm doing something with video. I could do about 10 presentations on video, but yeah.
So we do
And
this
I love
generally the second Tuesday of every month, and it's free from 5:30 to 7 Mountain Time here. And we're just really wanting to pass on some of the things that we have. And we also both offer classes, or I also help organize meetings and that. So this is our information. And if you have other questions, please feel free to call. Really good about that. And that's kind of our night.
Yeah.
So appreciate you guys being with us. And if there aren't any other questions, we can call it a night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you. If you could put it, I found out about this about 10 minutes or 15 minutes before it was happening.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think you might get more people if from our group of friends.
Yeah.
Trina,
Yeah.
if you let them know.
You know what happened? I was sending it out to everybody, and I went back and I picked up my phone, and I never sent the text, which is an interesting thing to think about. It was still sitting on my phone.
Right.
But from conversations today, people were like, yeah, we'd like to listen to that. And then Elizabeth showed up, but the people who said, yeah, send it to me, they didn't come. But
And we usually record these and then put them up in YouTube. So if you do have friends that you think might like it, just let us know and we'll give you the link to it. We do them every month. We've been doing this for it'll be 2 years and
2 months.
yeah, it'll be 2 years middle of the year, I think.
And I mean, to be really honest about it, this was a way for us to give back, but it was also a way for us to hone some skills and learn more and contribute and connect with people. So it's doing things like this, challenging yourself, just doing like little YouTube videos or webinars, things like that.
Yeah, it's a good idea. All the way around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Win-win.
Yes.
Okay.
If you're interested in doing presentations.
Thank you guys so much.
All
Nice
right.
to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Yeah.
Bye.